I escaped to the hills after discovering my wife's affair. I'm not entirely sure why I'm writing this now, but perhaps sharing my experience will help someone else. In February 2018, I found out through the mail that my 30-year-old wife, Janet, was having an affair after 3.5 years of marriage. I had a contract job that required occasional travel, but I worked from home whenever possible. Meanwhile, Janet held a high-paying position as the director of a technical sales firm. Our marriage was genuinely good, though it became strained due to my frequent trips and her increasingly demanding work hours. 5 years ago, I met Janet at a mutual friend's barbecue. We hit it off immediately, and I felt incredibly lucky to be with such a beautiful and articulate woman. She liked my rough-around-the-edges persona, and after a few weeks of dating, we were inseparable. We married after 8 months and moved into a big apartment while saving for a house. After 3 years of marriage, things began to change. I still felt strongly for her, but she started picking arguments over minor issues. When I expressed concern about her late hours and frequent work outings, she became defensive, insisting it was necessary for her career advancement. She argued I had no right to question her given my own absences. I assured her I could reduce my travel, which was only 3 or 4 days every 5 weeks. But our arguments went in circles without resolution. In hindsight, I had no idea Janet was having an affair. Her late work hours and the decline in our intimate life raised no suspicion. I attributed it to work-related exhaustion. My self-esteem suffered from her frequent rejections, but I remained oblivious to her secret texting. She might have been using her company phone while spending long hours in our spare bedroom, which she had turned into a home office. Around September 2017, Janet began attending evening work engagements more frequently, going from 1 evening a week to 3 or more. I'm not naturally jealous, but I knew she would attract attention at her office. My suspicions about her infidelity arose a month before D-Day when I found one of her bras under the front passenger seat of her car. She often removed her bra first when in the mood, and seeing it there gave me a sinking feeling. I left it where it was, feeling sick and trying to hide my shock when I brought in the groceries. Janet noticed my pale face and asked if I was okay, but I shrugged it off, concealing my anger and sense of betrayal. Determined to uncover the truth, I began piecing together clues, but I had no concrete evidence except for the unsettling bra incident. We lived in a large city, and her office was downtown. I decided to shift my focus from suspicion to giving her more attention. One Friday after work, I made a nice dinner, set the table with our best plates, silverware, and candles. I bought a nice bottle of wine and a bouquet of roses. As usual, she breezed in after work, and I eagerly pointed out the dinner I had prepared. Instead of the enthusiastic response I hoped for, she offered a sad smile and informed me that she had plans to meet up with her coworkers at a local hangout that evening, while suggesting a quick bite together before she left. She mentioned needing to jump in the shower first. I think my insides flipped on me, and I became completely speechless. I won't tell you what kind of rage I was feeling at that point, but I had finally had enough. While she was in the shower, I grabbed my company cell phone and planted it in her back seat. I'd been thinking of this lately as a way I could track her location with my personal phone. I went in and dumped the meal in the trash along with the flowers. She came back after her shower, dressed up and looking great as usual. She said, "Okay, let's eat." I told her, "Never mind, go out with your friends." She looked at me strangely and asked if I was mad. I said, "I'm disappointed by you never wanting to do anything together." She became angry and told me to quit acting like a child and said something snarky about having a short fuse. I stood there letting all this sink in and said, "Foolish me. I thought you'd like to spend the evening together for once." She just smirked at me and left in a huff. I took out my other phone and started tracking my work phone, observing her stopping at the bar, a regular spot for her work buddies, which was about 20 minutes away. I made the impromptu decision to head out and find her car, confirming my suspicions. Her car was indeed parked in the bar's lot. Sitting across the street in my car, I waited anxiously, feeling an unsettling sense of being unlike myself, almost akin to a stalker. But I rationalized that I needed to at least satisfy my anxiety about her whereabouts. About an hour after I arrived, I saw her coming out of the bar with a man. He looked like one of the execs I'd seen from her work. He grabbed her and pulled her close, kissing her. My stomach went into knots, and my body went completely numb. They headed over to another car and got in together. I did my best to follow them as the car pulled out. They traveled about 10 minutes away to, you guessed it, a hotel. I pulled over on the street next to the hotel. I watched as they got out and headed hand in hand into the hotel. I'd seen enough. I'm an idiot. I started banging my fist on the steering wheel. That's it. Something inside me went completely blank, and I'm not sure if I blacked out or had an out-of-body experience. When I recovered myself, I decided I needed a drink. Now this is when my life took a new direction that I would have never guessed. I just started driving out of town, reliving everything I had just witnessed, overwhelmed with rage and sorrow. I found myself driving toward the outskirts of town, covering about 30 miles. Seeking solace, I stumbled upon a quaint bar where I took a seat and ordered a drink. My appearance must have mirrored my inner turmoil, as the observant female bartender remarked that I seemed like someone who had been utterly deflated. I half smiled and said, "You could say that." A guy took a stool next to me and started up a conversation. I wasn't in much of a mood to talk, but something about this guy just made me feel comfortable. We started talking, and after a while, the subject of my wife cheating just tumbled out of my mind. How I just wanted to leave her and forget her. He looked at me and slapped me on the back, saying, "Buddy, you are not alone. That happened to me a few years ago. I believe that sometimes these things happen for a reason. And let me tell you, your life can now change either for the better or the worse. It's entirely up to you at this point." Something about him saying this really shook me out of my glum mood. I mean, I know I'm hurting, but I've always been able to see things logically, and he was so right. We introduced ourselves. His name was Jake. He was kind of a country guy, but was just the sort of salt-of-the-earth type that I really respected. Jake inquired about my plans to move out, a question that had never crossed my mind until then. The realization hit me that I no longer wanted to be in the same vicinity as Janet. The intense emotions of fight or flight surged within me. Sympathetic to my predicament, Jake offered support and suggested a plan in case I decided to leave at some point. "I've got a travel trailer sitting on my property. It's not great and could use a bit of fixing up. Why don't you come out and check it out and see if you could see yourself living in something like that temporarily at least? I'll make you a great deal on it. I even have a nice piece of property that you can park it on. You would be doing me a favor to keep an eye on it for me. It might do you some good to get away from your situation. Just a thought." It took me a minute to register his idea. The bartender, having overheard the conversation, smiled. "Hell, honey," she said. "If I could have escaped my crazy ex-husband years ago, I would have jumped at the chance to go live in his trailer. Anything to just get my head on straight." I felt like I had stumbled into the twilight zone, but maybe this was exactly what I needed. I told Jake I'd think about it and maybe check it out. We parted ways after a bit and made plans to meet out at his place in a few days. I started to feel like I had a little bit of perspective and a chance for getting out of what I believed was a nightmare mixed in with a heavy heartache. Absolutely certain I harbored no desire to reunite with Janet. Infidelity, a reprehensible act, had always been my unwavering boundary. Returning home after the revelation, I sank onto the couch, lost in my thoughts. Janet emerged and inquired about my whereabouts. I turned to her and asked her where she had been. She said, "You know, I went to grab drinks." I asked her point blank, "Are you having an affair?" She looked a little startled, but regained her composure and said, "No. Why would you ask me that?" I told her I heard she might be involved with someone from work. She asked who told me that. I told her someone that I knew but wouldn't divulge the name. She just told me I was being ridiculous and that I was drunk and delusional and asked me where I'd been. I told her, "Out to a bar to have some drinks with friends." She just stared at me, wanting to ask more, but headed back to our bedroom and went to bed. Choosing to spend the night on the couch, the weight of her month-long deceit pressed heavily on my mind. Sleep eluded me as vivid, painful images of her with the other man tormented my thoughts. Amidst disgust, hurt, and self-pity, a sudden revelation struck: the prospect of Jake's trailer. This idea, like a comforting beacon, offered solace. I must have something wrong with me, but with the pain I was in, the fight or flight mode just instinctively kicked in, and the flight part won me over. The next morning, we didn't speak much, and went about the weekend as if nothing had happened. A few days later, I made plans to meet up with Jake. I met him at his place. He owned a nice ranch, and the trailer was actually really nice, about 26 feet, and had all the necessities one needed to live in it. I had traveled with some friends in one back in college during a spring break and really enjoyed it. I made Jake an offer on it and he agreed to the price, I practically stole it from him. He gave me directions to his ranch property, and I drove over to check it out. It was beautiful, full of trees, scrub brush, and it looked like there were nearby hiking and biking trails bordering it. It was near the foothills of some mountains, and Jake had a small shack on a hill overlooking the property with water and electricity for the trailer available. Jake would tow the travel trailer to the designated site and handle its setup. In the ensuing weeks, my attempts to coax honesty from Janet were met with gaslighting. Despite my direct warning that infidelity would sever our ties permanently, her response was to delve further into the affair, enshrouding herself in denial and perpetuating the emotional fog. The denial was so bad it almost made me laugh. I had no physical proof of her cheating and kicked myself for not at least taking some photos of the two of them. As I went through this mental agony, I came to the conclusion that I wanted out of this marriage. Rather than let Janet know how I felt about things now, I just started making plans. I began stealthily taking my belongings out of the apartment while she was at work and moving them over to the trailer. This at least made me feel like I was taking action. I did notice a change in Janet during this time. She had been acting nicer around me, but in my mind, it was too little. Too late. As she continued her little company outings after work, I decided I too needed a break. In fact, as she was heading out for the evening, I also got dressed around the same time. She looked at me and asked where I was going. I just said I was meeting up with some friends. She started to ask, and I just told her she didn't know them and she wouldn't enjoy all the shop talk. This was exactly what she would tell me when I would ask if I could join her at one of her office outings. She kind of had a hurt look on her face and said, "Okay, have a nice time." I said, "I definitely will." Between working on the trailer and meeting up with Jake at the bar, I had started to make more friends. In reality, this situation resulted in enjoyable moments spent with an engaging circle of Jake's friends and family. To maintain a healthy balance, I've opted to moderate my drinking, steering clear of potential pitfalls. Around this juncture, Janet informed me of an upcoming work-related trip the following week. I asked her who all was going, and she told me the executive team and some department heads. I just looked at her and told her I hoped she had a really great time with her boyfriend. I kinda wish I hadn't said that because it started a lot of arguing back and forth. In a lot of ways, I wished I knew more about her affair partner. But as Jake put it to me, in the long run, it doesn't matter who the other guy is. It only matters that she decided to step out on you. She burned down the marriage. She can own it or deny it. But facts are facts, brother. Damn. Jake should write this stuff down and publish it for the betrayed. Her work trip provided me with the opportunity to move the rest of my stuff out completely. So after Janet left for her trip, I gathered everything I had left of any value and put it in my vehicle. I only took essentials like clothes and work-related equipment, leaving behind furniture and personal items. Instead of the detailed note I initially considered, I settled for a brief message on a piece of paper. I hope it was worth it. Placing my wedding ring on top of the note, I left it on the kitchen table for her to find. I felt a huge weight come off me. I felt free no more hiding the truth. I knew I would have some baggage to deal with and some hurt to get over. But I had time to heal now. I just needed some space and needed to get her out of my life as quietly and quickly as possible. I'm not proud that I never confronted her more or pulled a confession out of her. I never got to yell and scream and curse her. After confessing, I had come to the conclusion in my mind that she didn't deserve me. She disrespected everything we had, our future plans, our history. We were saving for a house and a future family. All of that was gone now. No going back. I didn't owe her a damn thing. She could deal with the fallout and aftermath. I didn't have an agenda at all. I didn't contact a lawyer or anything. I just wanted to get some clarity. I really enjoyed my new trailer, and the mountainous air was exactly what I needed. In the following week, I took up running again, and it felt great to be alive. I never answered any of Janet's texts while she was away. There wasn't much to respond to, they were just highlights such as, "We just landed," or "having a team dinner." She did send a few asking, "Where are you guys?" and "Let me hear from you," etc. The day she returned home, my phone blew up with constant texts and calls. After the first day, her mother even tried calling me. There's only my dad left on my family side, and we aren't close, so she didn't try to get him involved. After the first few crying messages, I never bothered to listen to the rest of her voicemails. Her texts consisted of, "What is this? We need to talk. I don't know what you think you know, But there is nothing going on. I'm not involved with anyone. I'm not having an affair. After a week of not responding, she finally left me a text saying, "I'm sorry things got out of hand. I was involved with someone at work, but it meant nothing. I got caught up in my work, and you were gone a lot, and I just made a mistake. I was going to end it." Huh? A mistake? This was the confession I had been seeking all along. For some reason, it just made me dislike her even more. Why couldn't she be honest? This wasn't the woman I had dreamed of building a future together with. And mistakes don't last for what, 6 to 8 months or a year? At one point, her pleading for me to come back and work on the marriage became pathetic. She stopped bothering me for a couple of weeks, and I continued to ignore her. I didn't want her to extract information about my whereabouts, preserving my sanctuary. However, one day she began sending me furious texts, accusing me of being a coward, stating that I wouldn't talk to her and claiming that I didn't care about us. "Please come home so we can talk. Where are you? I can come to you. Damn it, Joe. Please let's talk and fix things." I don't remember all the messages, but they all seem to be excuses and very little in the way of apologies. I let it all go in one ear and out the other. I finally changed my cell phone number. Update, June 2018. Janet sent me an email telling me she had retained a lawyer and was filing for divorce. I sent her a reply that said, "Okay, sounds good." This resulted in a flurry of emails demanding I come see her and so forth. She realized this wouldn't get her anywhere, and after a while, she just wrote that if I agreed to an uncontested divorce, she wouldn't bother me anymore. I agreed, and several months later, I was finally a free man. I never had to see her after I left our apartment, no closure for either of us, but it seemed like that was more important to her than to me. For a few months, I did think of her sometimes. And yes, the pain would appear out of nowhere if a song we used to listen to came on the radio. It used to trigger memories. However, eventually I stopped thinking about her. In an update, I can happily say that I am officially divorced now. Things are going really well. In fact, I've met a fantastic girl. I encountered her while out on a run on the trail just down the hill from where I live. I helped her change a flat tire, and we really hit it off. She is amazing and cute as hell, though a few years younger than me. She loves my lifestyle and calls me her mountain man. I'm in no hurry to get serious, but I'm not about to give up on women completely. I'm still up here in the trailer. I have no plans to change anytime soon, and I've simplified my life quite a bit. I love the outdoors. It helped me get over my ex-wife, the heartache, everything. I know everyone handles these things differently. I was lucky to not have children yet and was only into my 3rd year of marriage, so I think I did what was right for me. You don't have to live your life with a cheater. If something like this happens to you, please just don't dwell on it, just move on with your life. It gets better after you work on yourself. I wish everyone the best life they can have. Pete, you handled it perfectly, and Jake is a ray of hope, your guardian angel. Opie shared a small update. I appreciate the supportive comments. Unfortunately, this story reflects a harsh reality concerning my ex. We haven't had a direct conversation since the divorce. I receive occasional emails, but I choose not to respond. While curiosity tempted me to consider replying, I refrained. However, approximately 3 weeks ago, I bumped into a mutual friend who mentioned that Janet was not a happy camper, unlike me. Laughter ensued. She said that my ex had told her that I will always be the one that got away, and if she ever got the chance, she would try to win me back and tell me everything that went on. I didn't press the friend for too much detail, but I do have more info that I'm a bit hesitant to share now. To the big update, is my ghosted ex-wife possibly tracking me down? Just wanted to update on the situation I found myself in with my ex-wife, and have rewritten this about 5 times to make it legible. As mentioned in my previous post, I was concerned that my ex-wife was trying to track me down in an attempt to reconcile or something. I had moved some 2 hours from where we used to live. I saw her last weekend in a coffee shop I go to frequently in the town that is near to where I live. I was suspicious that it was not a coincidence that she was there. Luckily, I was able to leave before she saw me. Update. I came back into town this past weekend to grab a few groceries and went to grab a coffee in the place I usually go to, as well as work on some documents I needed to fill out for work using their free internet. Exiting the coffee shop, I headed towards my truck. Suddenly, I heard my name being called, Joe. Glancing across the street, my heart sank. There she was, Janet, my ex, waving at me. It felt like the apocalypse had arrived. Stunned, I stood frozen as she dashed across the street, expecting a hug. Instinctively, I held my arms out with palms facing outward, and she stopped. She looked at me, really hurt. She then said, "Joe, I have been looking for you. I heard you moved out here and wanted to see you. Can we talk?" I felt like a trapped animal, guys. I really did. So I relented and said, "Okay, let's find a table or something, and we can talk for a minute." She asked if we could go to my place, and I just flat out said, "No." She followed me down to a bench outside a little shop at the end of the block. She started by saying how much I've changed, and how she loves my new look, my beard, blah blah. She liked how my physique had changed, how I looked so fit. She put on a good act, and guys, she looked hot. She had on these little white shorts and a tank top and her hair in a ponytail like I used to like. My radar was on high alert, and I could tell she was really turning on the sex appeal. I had to really rein myself in here and see where this was going. She began with an apology for the affair, acknowledging that karma had struck her hard following my departure. Her company discovered the affair, creating such an unpleasant environment that she eventually resigned. Her affair partner, who had a fiancé as CS at the time, received a reprimand and was relocated to a different position within the company. Blaming her for his relocation, he lashed out, prompting her to disclose the truth to his fiancée CE, leading to the end of their relationship. She lowered her head a little and started crying. I just sat there looking around, not having anything to say. She straightened up and stared at me for a bit. I asked her what she wanted from me. She wanted to tell me that she never intended to start an affair, that she felt like she was drawn in by all the politics and positioning in the company and thought the affair partner really manipulated her with his charisma and power within the company. She stupidly thought she was using him as much as he was using her. She was going to come clean with me, especially after I accused her of having an affair. She hated herself during that time, and the after-work drinking was her attempt to medicate from the guilt. Right after I left her, she felt so foolish, so alone, like her heart just imploded with loss. She immediately broke things off with her affair partner. She believed that since I wouldn't reach out or communicate with her, she had to seek me out to try and make amends. Her intention was to see if we could start over with a clean slate, even though she knew we were already divorced. I just stared at her, and then I confronted her, roughly summarizing our conversation. "How dare you think you can just come out here and think you can just wipe away all the crap you caused? I'm to forgive everything you did to ruin our marriage? I told you before, if you cheated on me, we were through. There is no forgiveness. There is no reboot of this relationship. You killed it. You destroyed what we had the minute you stepped out on me. How stupid do you think I am? I followed you one night and saw you go into a hotel together. Do you know that?" I then realized that I had been raising my voice and people were starting to notice. She started to sob. She grabbed my arm. I let her cry on my shoulder a little before nudging her away. She looked up at me. "I deserve all this. I know I do. Can you at least let me take you to dinner or something? I don't want to leave. I want to talk more. I want to make sure we have everything out in the open. I need time with you that you didn't give me before. Please, Joe. I know you may not want to hear this, but I love you so much," she uttered. "I didn't realize how much I loved you until you left me and shattered me, and I shattered you just as badly. I can't forgive myself. I don't want to forgive myself until the day I die," she continued. Overwhelmed, she began hyperventilating and sobbing uncontrollably. In an attempt to console her, I pulled her up and embraced her, feeling that it might be the only way to possibly soothe her distress. At that moment, I realized I did actually break her heart like she broke mine. I started walking with her, and then found a nice quiet path to walk on, and things settled down a bit. I then asked her how she found me and if she hired a PI or something. She laughed a little and said no. She thought about it, though. She ran into Stacy a couple of weeks ago and asked her how things were going. Stacy let it slip that she saw me. Janet made her spill every single detail. Stacy didn't want to tell her because I told her not to, but she wouldn't let her go until she did. But all she really knew was that she saw me here in town and that I lived somewhere in the vicinity. So she started coming here on her days off to see if she could find me. She really blushed when she said that. I kind of chuckled. Damn, Stacy can't keep her trap shut. So we did go to dinner. We found a nice little place with a patio. I made sure we didn't drink anything. I didn't want any excuse for her to soften me up or claim she was too drunk to drive back. Following our emotional exchange, we engaged in a heartfelt conversation. As I escorted her to her car, she expressed a strong desire to stay, persistently urging me despite her assurance that she hadn't been involved with anyone else since my departure and that I was the only one she wanted. I firmly declined. It felt far too early for me to contemplate reopening that chapter. She begged to see me again, but I was non-committal. I gave her my new email address, but that was it. She wanted my phone number, but I told her no. You'll just blow it up with texts and calls. She cried about that one. She said she would be back in town next weekend if I was interested. I didn't say anything to that. She said she will email me and tell me all the details of when and where. Before she left, I asked her point blank if she would forgive me if I had done the cheating. She sat there thinking, and she said yes, she would in time, but only if we saw a marriage counselor or if we could work through the healing process with lots of talking and maybe even a binding agreement. I considered her proposition, acknowledging that perhaps in 5 or 10 years, I might be open to revisiting our relationship. She agreed to wait if that's what it would take. Holding my hands, she looked deep into my eyes and uttered something unexpected. "God damn it, Joe. I will always love you and will do anything to prove it," she declared. At that, she left. I'm still so shook by that. She said it with such conviction. I still can't see myself back with her. I feel better, though. Right now, I can't even see her as in friends with benefits, maybe a friend. But damn, I just don't know if we could ever work out again. Don't call me a chump because second chances are rare in my book. I went home and had a nice long run and a few beers and felt I was in a good place now. Can someone guarantee me that she wouldn't ruin that? I don't know. I just don't know. It's too fresh on my mind, but I have the luxury of time to sort all this out and get some perspective.